A single, venomous sentence shattered my world. You should have been the one to die, not Dad. When I drew a line on further financial demands, I disappeared from her life, taking all traces of myself with me. This is the tale of how I lost everything I once held dear, only to finally discover who I truly was. If you're watching this, please hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from. Robert's picture gazed from the mantelpiece as I arranged fresh flowers nearby. 4 years had passed, yet certain moments made his absence feel as sharp as yesterday. My finger followed the silver frame's edge, recalling the feeling of his touch, strong and comforting. Now just a memory. Mother, did you remember your pills today? Amber's voice drifted from the kitchen, a faint edge of irritation just beneath her feigned worry. Yes, dear. I didn't point out that I'd managed my own prescriptions for 4 decades before she took over as my self-appointed guardian. Minor disagreements simply weren't worth the emotional cost anymore. I observed her from the doorway as she sifted through my mail, organizing statements into neat stacks. My youngest, my unexpected blessing, born when I was 37, after years of trying, now 29, still living at home, still seeking her direction. My sons had built their own lives long ago. Thomas, with his medical career in Boston, Michael, with his engineering ventures in Japan. But Amber remained in a constant state of transition. The property tax bill arrived today, she remarked casually, sliding an envelope into her handbag. I'll handle it. I'd like to review it first, I heard myself say, the words escaping before I could weigh their impact. Her head jerked up, her gaze narrowing. Why? So you can agonize over it? You have enough burdens, Mom. It was the usual speech, the exact phrases she'd used during Robert's final illness, when she slowly took charge of our accounts. For our protection, she'd insisted, to shield us from stress during Robert's 18-month struggle with pancreatic cancer. I'm not helpless, Amber. My grief doesn't mean I can't manage my own affairs. She let out a dramatic sigh. Thomas called earlier. His malpractice lawsuit is still ongoing. He sounded quite worried. The sudden shift in topic, another familiar maneuver. My eldest son's legal problems had consumed him for nearly 2 years, leaving little room for family matters. I'd suggested he visit more frequently, but Amber always found reasons why my presence would only increase his stress. Perhaps I should call him back, I offered, reaching for my phone. I already told him you were resting. Her tone grew sharper. Mom, I'm trying to shield you. Everyone else is busy with their own lives. I'm the only one who remained to care for you. I stifled my protest and simply nodded. Later that evening, as we sat at the dining table, Amber casually brought up needing funds for a photography workshop in New York. Her 5th course in 3 years, none ever finished. Have you considered searching for a more permanent job? I suggested gently. Something that could develop into a career? Her fork clattered loudly against the plate. The boys always received everything. Thomas had that apartment in Boston during his residency. Michael got assistance with his down payment. You never truly believed in me. I stared at my daughter, suddenly noticing something I'd overlooked for years. Beneath her indignation lay something calculated, something cold. For the first time since Robert's passing, I questioned if I was truly seeing my daughter, or merely the persona she'd perfected. While I was submerged in sorrow, the bank's number flashing on my phone screen was completely unexpected. I answered with apprehension, my hands suddenly damp. Mrs. Wilson, this is Diana Fletcher from Bank of America. We have a situation that needs your immediate attention. My heart fluttered. What has happened? There's been an attempt to significantly increase your credit limit. Our senior security system flagged it. We require your personal confirmation. I sank into the kitchen chair. I never requested any increase. I suspected as much. Diana's voice softened. Mrs. Wilson, would you be able to visit the branch today? There are some issues I believe we should discuss in person. 2 hours later, I sat across from Diana in her office, examining account statements I'd never seen. Transaction after transaction, withdrawals, loans, credit cards I'd never applied for. These are all under my name, I whispered, my finger trembling as it traced the column of figures, but I didn't approve any of this. Diana's expression remained professionally neutral, yet her eyes conveyed empathy. The most recent charge was $15,000 3 days ago. Does that resonate with you? I shook my head, feeling a sudden chill despite the warm office. Mrs. Wilson, I don't wish to overstep. But, she hesitated. Does anyone else have access to your financial records? The question lingered in the air like a looming storm. I knew the answer, had probably known it for months, but speaking it aloud would make it undeniable. My daughter assists me with my finances. Diana nodded, her expression cautious. I understand. My advice is not to confront anyone yet. First, let's secure your accounts. Then, if you feel ready, we should discuss the next steps. I left the bank with temporary passwords, a blocked credit card, and an emptiness in my chest no medicine could soothe. I drove to Willow Creek Cafe, texting Amber to meet me there. Public places felt somehow safer. She arrived 20 minutes late, flustered, and checking her phone repeatedly. I can't stay long. What's so urgent it couldn't wait until dinner? I took a deep breath. I'd like to resume managing my own finances. Her coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. Where is this coming from? I think it's time. Robert has been gone 4 years. I need to start standing on my own. Her expression shifted like sinking sand. After everything I've done? You couldn't even manage bills correctly. Amber. There was a $15,000 charge. She stood so abruptly, her chair scraped backward, coffee spilling across the table. You should have died instead of Dad. At least he truly loved me. The cafe fell silent. Faces turned toward us, then quickly averted. Shame burned through me. Not for anything I'd done, but for what I'd allowed. With all the dignity I could summon, I placed a $20 bill on the table and walked out, holding back my tears until I reached the sanctuary of my car. Only then did I allow myself to break. The pattern of transactions suggests this has been occurring for approximately 4 years, Mrs. Wilson. Kevin Matthews, the bank's fraud specialist, spoke gently as he presented document after document. It began subtly during your husband's illness and escalated after his passing. I stared at what appeared to be my signature on loan applications I'd never seen. That's not my handwriting, I whispered. It's similar, but the W is distinct. Kevin nodded. Sadly, elder financial exploitation often involves forgery, most frequently by someone who has observed your signature many times. What happens now? My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. The bank will launch an internal inquiry. However, he hesitated. Recovery can be difficult when family members are implicated. I strongly advise legal counsel specializing in elder abuse cases. I left with a folder of documents and Kevin's business card with a name inscribed on the back, David Cohen, attorney at law. That night, I sat in my quiet kitchen, the house creaking around me. The pasta I'd prepared grew cold as I stared at the papers spread before me. 4 decades of marriage, and I'd never once balanced a checkbook. Robert had managed all financial matters. When he fell ill, Amber stepped in. I'd been thankful. Relief had clouded my judgment. The telephone rang, startling me. Mom, it's Michael. My middle child's voice calling from halfway across the globe. Just checking in. How are you? I stared at the financial statements before me. I'm fine, dear. How's Japan wrapping up? I should be back stateside permanently in about 3 months. Listen, I tried calling the house, but no answer. Is everything all right? I nearly told him everything then, the words pressing against my lips. But what would that achieve? Michael was thousands of miles away, focused on completing his project. Thomas was battling his own difficulties with the malpractice suit. And Amber, everything's fine. I lied, just busy with church activities. After we hung up, I reached for my laptop, a Christmas gift from the children that I rarely used. Opening a browser, I typed, "How to identify financial elder abuse." The results made my stomach clench. Every description perfectly matched my situation. One website advised documenting everything, securing vital papers, and seeking professional help immediately. With trembling hands, I reached for my phone and dialed the number on Kevin's card. "Mr. Cohen's office," a woman answered. "My name is Margaret Wilson," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to speak with Mr. Cohen about financial elder abuse. I believe my daughter has been stealing from me for years." Saying the words aloud broke something open inside me. Pain, yes, but also a strange sense of clarity. The truth, however terrible, was finally exposed. And in that moment, I realized I couldn't face this alone. Tomorrow, I would speak with Pastor Jim. Not for guidance on forgiveness that would come later, but for something I needed more urgently: strength to face what was coming. "I'm Diana Reynolds." The woman across from me didn't offer a handshake, just a business card and direct eye contact. "Mr. Cohen says you need a financial investigator." I nodded, studying her. Mid-50s, a no-nonsense suit, hair pulled back severely. No jewelry except small gold studs. Nothing about her invited casual conversation. Exactly what I needed. "Can you discover what happened to my money?" I asked plainly. "If there's a paper trail, yes." She opened a notebook. "But I need complete honesty from you, Mrs. Wilson. No protecting anyone. No excuses." I flinched but nodded. "Good. First rule: don't confront your daughter. Don't alter your behavior. Act normal." "How can I possibly?" "You must," Diana interrupted. "The moment she suspects an investigation, evidence will vanish. Bank records can be subpoenaed, but if she's using cash or transfers to third parties, we need to catch those in real time." Over the next few weeks, I lived a dual existence. On the surface, Margaret Wilson, widow, mother, church volunteer. Beneath, a woman working with a growing team of professionals to document a betrayal so extensive it stole my breath. I watched Amber check my mail, taking anything financial. I noticed how she'd casually ask for my phone when a banking text arrived. I observed her surreptitiously photographing documents in my desk. Each discovery was meticulously documented by Diana, who required me to keep a daily log of every interaction. David Cohen prepared legal documents I'd never imagined needing: power of attorney revocations, cease and desist orders, civil complaints. The day Diana called me to her office, her expression was grimmer than usual. "We found the life insurance money," she said without preamble, sliding a folder across her desk. "Robert's policy, $450,000, that was supposed to be divided among our 3 children. I'd assumed the executor had handled it." "Property records," Diana explained as I opened the folder. "Your daughter purchased a Manhattan apartment for $850,000 3 years ago. The down payment was exactly $150,000. 1/3 of your husband's policy." "But she lives with me," I whispered. "She said she couldn't afford her own place. It's rented out." $4,250 monthly income that's being deposited to an account you don't know about." My hands began to shake. She told me she was struggling financially. My voice broke. "She asked me for money last week for basic expenses." Diana's expression softened marginally. "Mrs. Wilson, we have enough. It's time to involve your sons. They have their own problems. Thomas with his lawsuit. Michael overseas. Your daughter has stolen approximately $180,000 beyond the insurance money. Your home has been remortgaged without your knowledge. Your credit is severely compromised." Her eyes met mine directly. "This isn't something you can handle alone anymore." As I left Diana's office, my phone buzzed with a text from Amber. "Made your favorite for dinner. Don't be late." The casual cruelty of it, the pretense of caring, while systematically destroying my future, made me grip the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. For the first time since this began, what I felt wasn't hurt or betrayal. It was rage. "You have several options," David Cohen explained, his office smelling of leather and lemon polish, each with different implications. I sat straighter. conscious of my posture. The Margaret Wilson who had walked into his office 6 weeks ago had been hunched with shame. Today I felt different. Not stronger yet, but no longer diminished. Criminal charges would likely result in jail time, David continued. Civil action could recover assets, but takes longer. Family intervention with legal oversight is fastest, but requires her cooperation. Diana Reynolds, seated beside me, added, "The evidence is solid. Multiple instances of forgery, identity theft, fraudulent loans. The decision is yours, but you need protection, immediately." I considered the folder in my lap. Photographs of my daughter entering banks with documents, ATM camera shots of her withdrawing from accounts I didn't know existed, my forged signature on loan applications. How do I protect myself right now? My voice was steady. Over the next 2 weeks, I implemented their recommendations: credit freezes, new accounts at different institutions, formal disputes of fraudulent loans, each step small, each building toward security. Meanwhile, I began sessions with Dr. Eleanor Simmons, a therapist specializing in family trauma. "When did you first notice concerning behavior from Amber?" she asked during our second session. I thought back. She took money from my purse as a teenager. Small amounts at first. When we confronted her, there was always a dramatic explanation. "How did your husband respond?" A memory surfaced. Robert writing a check to a local shop owner after one 6-year-old Amber was caught shoplifting. "Let's handle this privately," he'd insisted. No need for records that could hurt her future. He protected her, I admitted. We both did. When she struggled in college, dropping out after changing majors repeatedly, we called it finding herself. When she couldn't hold jobs, we blamed difficult bosses. And after your husband's diagnosis, she seemed to transform overnight. Suddenly responsible, handling paperwork, dealing with insurance. I was so grateful. I twisted my wedding ring. I thought she'd finally matured. Dr. Simmons leaned forward. "Margaret, you've mentioned feeling ashamed several times. I'd like to address that. Shouldn't I be? I was blind to what was happening. You were grieving your husband while supporting him through terminal illness, then navigating widowhood. These are overwhelming life events that predators, even family members, exploit." Predator. The word stuck in my throat. "That's my daughter you're talking about." "Yes," she said gently. "And understanding that someone you love intentionally caused harm is its own trauma. We need to address both the financial abuse and this emotional betrayal." Later that evening, swimming laps at the community pool, my first exercise in years, I considered Dr. Simmons' words. Each stroke through the water felt like pushing against the weight of my own guilt. Nearby, a woman my age completed a perfect dive. As she surfaced, I recognized Patricia Henderson from my old book club. "Margaret Wilson, haven't seen you here in ages." "Getting back into it," I replied, suddenly self-conscious in my old swimsuit. "Good for you." She smiled genuinely. "Hey, some of us meet for coffee after swimming on Thursdays. You should join us." For a moment, I hesitated. New routines meant questions about my life, questions I wasn't ready to answer. Then I remembered Diana's advice. Reclaim pieces of yourself, one small step at a time. "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. "You're getting the hang of this," Patricia said, peering over my shoulder at the spreadsheet on my laptop. 6 months had passed since that day at the bank. 6 months of learning a language I should have mastered decades ago. "Still feels like reading hieroglyphics," I admitted, adjusting my new glasses. My first independent purchase after opening accounts Patricia had helped me establish. "You're being too hard on yourself. Most people spend years learning financial management." Patricia, I discovered, was a retired forensic accountant who had specialized in banking fraud cases. Our poolside friendship had evolved into weekly financial literacy sessions at my kitchen table. My kitchen in my new apartment, smaller than the house I'd shared with Robert, but entirely mine. The sale of our family home had been necessary after discovering the extent of the remortgaging Amber had arranged without my knowledge. The loss still ached, but less sharply now. My phone buzzed. Thomas. Mom, Michael's flight gets in tomorrow night. We'll drive up together the next morning for the meeting. How are you holding up? I'm prepared, I answered truthfully. After months of investigation, documentation, and preparation, tomorrow would be the first time my 3 children would be in the same room since Robert's funeral. The first time I would confront Amber with my sons present. We'll be there by 10. Love you, Mom. After hanging up, I caught my reflection in the window. My hair, silver white now without the auburn dye, Amber had insisted took years off, was cut in a practical bob instead of the matronly style I'd worn for decades. The nervous smile and apologetic posture were gone, replaced by something quieter but more certain. Patricia gathered her things. Big day tomorrow. Get some rest. Thank you, I said, walking her to the door. For everything. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow will be hard. Family confrontations always are. After she left, I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset. The community garden below buzzed with early evening activity. Elderly couples tending vegetables, children helping grandparents water flowers. My phone buzzed again. Amber, Mom, I need to cancel dinner tomorrow. Something came up with friends. Rain check. The casual lie. She had no idea I knew about tomorrow's meeting, orchestrated through the family attorney as a discussion of estate planning. Something twisted inside me. That's fine, dear, I replied. The familiar script still easy after months of pretense. Take care. I set the phone down, remembering Dr. Simmons' words from our session that morning. Tomorrow will feel like an ending, she'd said. But it's actually a beginning. The start of truth in your family system. I wasn't sure if Thomas and Michael were ready for that truth. Our few careful conversations had revealed their own blindness about their sister. Thomas, dismissing her as merely irresponsible. Michael making excuses about her finding her path. Tomorrow would change everything for all of us. The careful documentation, the legal preparations, the financial evidence, it would all become real in ways that couldn't be ignored or explained away. As darkness fell, I moved inside, pausing at the small desk where I kept Robert's photograph. I wish you were here, I whispered, touching the frame, but I think you'd be proud of me now. For the first time, I believed those words might actually be true. Michael arrived first. Dark circles under his eyes betraying his jet lag. My middle child, always the peacemaker, hugged me tightly. You look different, Mom, he said, studying me. I mean that in a good way. Life changes us, I replied, pouring him coffee in my small kitchen. How does it feel to be back stateside permanently? Adjustment. The Tokyo team still calls at 3 a.m. He sipped his coffee, glancing around my new apartment. This place suits you, though I'm still confused why you sold the house so suddenly. Before I could answer, a sharp knock announced Thomas's arrival. My oldest entered with his characteristic, purposeful stride, briefcase in hand, eyes quickly scanning my living space. Downsizing was smart, he said after brief hugs. That house was too much maintenance. Always the practical one, making assessments, finding solutions. We sat at my kitchen table, the brothers exchanging updates about careers and families. I let them talk, watching their familiar dynamics unfold. Thomas taking charge, Michael mediating, roles established in childhood unchanged by decades. So, Thomas finally said, checking his watch. What's this meeting about? Your text mentioned financial concerns. I took a breath. We should wait for the others. Who else is coming? The doorbell answered his question. David Cohen entered first, followed by Diana Reynolds, whose expression remained professionally neutral as she nodded to my sons. What's going on, Mom? Thomas's voice sharpened with concern. Please. I gestured to the living room where additional chairs had been arranged. Let's sit down. We're expecting one more person. Margaret has asked us to help facilitate a family discussion, David explained, placing his briefcase on the coffee table. I'm her attorney. Attorney? Michael's eyebrows shot up. Mom, are you in some kind of trouble? Not your mother, Diana said, checking her watch. Your sister should be arriving shortly. The confusion on my sons' faces might have been comical in another context. Amber knows about this meeting? Thomas asked. She believes it's about estate planning, I explained. She doesn't know the real purpose. Which is what, exactly? Michael's voice had an edge now. I looked at both my sons, these men I'd raised, now middle-aged with graying temples and lives I was largely absent from. How had we become such strangers? Your sister has been systematically stealing from me for the past 4 years, I said plainly. Today, we're going to address it as a family. The shock on their faces confirmed what I'd suspected. Neither had seen it coming. Thomas recovered first, his doctor's analytical mind immediately seeking evidence. That's a serious accusation. What proof? A knock at the door cut him off. Diana moved to answer it, returning with Amber, whose smile faltered as she took in the assembled group. What's going on? Her eyes darted between her brothers. I thought this was about Mom's will. Please sit down, Amber, David said, his tone courtroom formal. We have matters to discuss regarding your mother's finances. I watched her face carefully, the flicker of panic quickly masked by indignation, the slight step backward, the reflexive reach for her purse. I don't understand, she said, voice rising slightly. Mom, what is this? Before I could speak, David opened his briefcase, removing a thick folder. I have here documentation of approximately 4 years of financial transactions conducted in Margaret Wilson's name without her knowledge or consent. Amber's face drained of color as David methodically laid out bank statements, loan documents, property records, each a nail in the coffin of her deception. Thomas stood abruptly. Is this true? Have you been stealing from Mom? And so it began. This is ridiculous. Amber's voice escalated to a pitch. I recognized the same tone she'd used when caught shoplifting at 16. Mom obviously doesn't understand what she's saying. She's been confused lately. Thomas's face hardened. The evidence looks pretty damn clear to me. What evidence? Some paperwork? Mom asked me to handle her finances. She couldn't manage after Dad died. Amber turned to me, eyes wide. Tell them, Mom, tell them how you asked for my help. I met my daughter's gaze steadily. I asked you to help with bill payments during your father's illness. I never authorized loans, credit cards, or remortgaging our home. Our home? That house belonged to all of us. I grew up there too. I stayed while they left. She gestured wildly at her brothers. Michael, always the mediator, stepped forward. Amber, if there's been a misunderstanding. There's no misunderstanding, Diana interrupted, opening her laptop. We have video from bank cameras, documented patterns of forgery, and testimony from financial institutions. She turned the screen, showing footage of Amber at an ATM, then at a bank counter presenting documents. The timestamp showed a date 6 months prior. So what? Amber challenged. I was handling Mom's banking. She knew about it. David removed another document from his folder. This is a forensic handwriting analysis of Margaret's signature compared to signatures on loan documents. They were forged. Thomas moved closer, his medical training drawing him to the evidence. These comparison points are conclusive, he murmured, examining the document. He looked up at Amber, disbelief hardening into certainty. You forged Mom's signature repeatedly. You don't understand what it's been like, Amber's voice cracked. Stuck here while you two built your perfect lives. Who took care of Mom and Dad? Who was here every day during his cancer treatments? Me. So that justifies theft? Thomas demanded. It wasn't theft. It was fair compensation for everything I sacrificed. Michael sat heavily, running his hands through his hair. The insurance money, Amber? Was that fair compensation too? What insurance money? She asked too quickly, eyes darting. Diana pulled up property records on her laptop. The Manhattan apartment purchased with the proceeds from Robert Wilson's life insurance policy. A policy that, according to his will, was to be divided equally among his 3 children. I needed it more than they did, Amber shouted, gesturing at her brothers. Thomas makes surgeon money. Michael has that fancy international career. What about me? I watched my daughter's performance, the tears, the accusations, the righteous anger. How many times had I seen this exact display when she was confronted with consequences? How many times had Robert and I retreated, believing her distress was punishment enough? Amber, I said quietly, cutting through her escalating tirade. This stops now. She froze mid-sentence, unused to this tone from me. You stole from me, I continued, my voice steady. You betrayed my trust while I was grieving. You forged my signature. You took your brother's inheritance. These are crimes, not misunderstandings. Mom, she began, but I raised my hand. I'm not finished. For months, I've documented everything, working with legal and financial experts. Today, you have a choice to make. David outlined the options: criminal charges, which would likely result in prison time, or a strictly supervised repayment agreement with legal oversight. Amber's face contorted with rage. You would send your own daughter to prison? After everything I've done for this family? I didn't create this situation, I replied, finding strength I didn't know I possessed. You did. Every forged signature, every stolen dollar, every lie. She turned to her brothers, seeking alliance. Are you both going to let her do this to me? Thomas stood rigidly, arms crossed. You stole our inheritance, Amber. You robbed our mother. What exactly do you expect us to say? Michael, always softer, looked torn. Amber, if you cooperate, make amends. Make amends? She spat the word. I'm the only one who sacrificed for this family. I deserve that money. In that moment, watching my youngest child reveal who she truly was, I felt a strange sense of clarity. The fog of maternal guilt and obligation lifted, revealing the simple truth. Love couldn't heal what Amber refused to acknowledge was broken. You have 24 hours to decide, I said, rising from my chair. Criminal charges or supervised repayment. Your choice. Her expression shifted from rage to disbelief. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. She signed the agreement, David informed me, closing his leather portfolio. Reluctantly, but legally binding. 2 days had passed since the confrontation. 2 days of silence from Amber, after her tearful exit from my apartment, Thomas escorting her out while Michael sat shell-shocked on my couch. What happens now? I asked, accepting the copy David handed me. The apartment goes on the market immediately. Proceeds will be divided per your husband's will. The repayment schedule for other funds begins next month, supervised by the court for 5 years. Diana, joining us via video call, added, We've initiated disputes with the financial institutions. Some have already agreed to partial forgiveness based on the fraud evidence. It felt surreal. Reducing 4 years of betrayal to legal documents and repayment schedules, the practical resolution of an emotional devastation. Did she say anything? I couldn't help asking about why. David hesitated. Mrs. Wilson, in my experience with similar cases, there's rarely a satisfying explanation. Entitlement, opportunity, rationalization. These are common factors, but they don't provide the closure families hope for. After they left, I walked to the community center where I'd begun volunteering 3 afternoons weekly. The routine kept me anchored, cataloging donated books, helping elderly neighbors with technology questions, teaching a basic financial literacy class that had started as a joke, but quickly attracted a dozen regular attendees. Margaret, Patricia waved from the reception desk. You've got visitors. Thomas and Michael stood awkwardly in the lobby, both looking exhausted. We hadn't spoken since they'd left my apartment after the confrontation. Let's get coffee, I suggested, leading them to the center's small cafe. Once seated, Thomas spoke first. We met with Amber and her attorney this morning. I nodded, waiting. She's not remorseful, Michael said carefully. She still believes she was entitled to the money. I know. The knowledge hurt, but no longer surprised me. Mom, I owe you an apology, Thomas said suddenly. I should have been more present after Dad died. I let my own problems become an excuse. We both did, Michael added. We saw what we wanted to see with Amber. It was easier than acknowledging the truth. I studied my sons, one precise and driven, the other diplomatic and peace-seeking. Both carrying their own guilt now. We all failed each other in different ways, I said finally. But that's in the past. What matters is what we do now. Thomas straightened, ever the problem solver. We've been discussing options. The dispute with the second mortgage might take months to resolve. In the meantime, we can help with. I appreciate that, I interrupted gently, but I'm managing. They exchanged glances, clearly surprised. Really? I continued. My expenses are minimal now. The apartment is affordable. I'm receiving Social Security, and the church fund from your father's service has helped with legal fees. But the money Amber took, Michael began, will be addressed through the legal system. Not the one I had, but perhaps the one I need now. I told them about my volunteer work, my swimming routine, the financial classes with Patricia, the new friends I'd made. With each example, their expressions shifted from concern to something like wonder. Mom, Thomas said finally. You're different. Yes, I agreed simply. I am. As we parted, promises of more regular visits exchanged. I felt a weight lifting. Not the pain of Amber's betrayal that would linger, but the burden of being solely defined as a victim of it. Walking home, I noticed a help wanted sign in the window of Hartwell's bookshop. On impulse, I entered. Good afternoon. The gray-haired woman behind the counter greeted me. Can I help you find something? Actually, I said, surprising myself. I'm interested in the position advertised. She looked me over appraisingly. Experience? 40 years as a reader. 6 months cataloging at the community center. A lifetime of recommending books to reluctant readers. I smiled. And I'm extremely reliable. Part-time only, she warned. 15 hours weekly, mostly afternoons. Perfect, I replied. As I left with an application form, my phone buzzed with a text from Amber. This isn't over. You'll regret what you've done. I stared at the message, feeling the familiar twist of pain, but something else too, a certainty that hadn't existed before. I deleted the message without responding and continued walking, head high. Mrs. Wilson, your 9 is here, called Jenny, the bookshop's college-aged assistant. 8 months had passed since I'd started working at Hartwell's 3 afternoons weekly. What began as a distraction had become a source of unexpected joy. Send them back, I called, arranging the chairs in our small reading nook. The Classics for Coffee book club had been my suggestion to Eleanor Hartwell, the shop's owner, now 12 members strong. It brought steady business and filled Thursday mornings with lively discussion. Before the group arrived, I checked my phone. A text from Thomas. Court-approved final settlement terms. Amber has 30 days to begin payments. Nearly a year had passed since the confrontation. The legal proceedings had moved glacially but steadily. The Manhattan apartment had finally sold after 9 months on the market at a loss, but sufficient to provide Thomas and Michael their shares of Robert's insurance. My portion remained in an account managed by the court trustee, part of the overall restitution plan. The bookshop bell jingled as my group entered, mostly retirees with 2 high school teachers who adjusted their schedules to attend. We were discussing Middlemarch today, George Eliot's examination of provincial life and thwarted ambition. Margaret, you're glowing today, observed Helen, a retired English professor. Good news? I smiled, distributing coffee cups. Moving forward on a difficult situation. They knew fragments of my story, not the details, but enough to understand I'd faced a significant betrayal and financial hardship. Their quiet support had been another unexpected gift of this new chapter. After the discussion, as I shelved returned books, Eleanor approached. That community outreach program you suggested is really taking off. 3 senior centers have requested workshops. The program offering basic financial literacy to seniors had started small with just Patricia and me visiting the local retirement community. Now, we had 5 volunteer instructors, including a retired banker and a former economics teacher. Bank of America called again. Eleanor continued. They want to sponsor the program formally, provide materials, even a small stipend for instructors. I nearly dropped the book I was holding. That's Diane Fletcher's doing. Your guardian angel at the bank. Probably. Eleanor smiled. You've built something important here, Margaret. Something that will help others avoid what happened to you. That evening, walking home through the park, I paused at the duck pond. A year ago, I couldn't have imagined this life. Working part-time, teaching financial literacy, hosting a book club. Small things, perhaps. But mine, chosen, not inherited or thrust upon me. My phone rang. Michael, calling from his new office in Boston. I forwarded something you should see. At home, I opened my laptop to find an email from Amber to both brothers. The subject line: "This family is dead to me." The message was brief but vicious, accusing all of us of betrayal, claiming she would make minimum payments only because legal thugs forced her to. The final line read, "Don't contact me again, any of you." I closed the laptop, surprisingly calm. "Are you okay?" I asked Michael, who had stayed on the phone. "Shouldn't I be asking you that?" His voice was gentle. "She's your daughter." "Yes," I agreed. "And I'll always love the child she was. But I can't excuse the adult she's chosen to become." Later, preparing for bed, I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The woman looking back had clear eyes and straight shoulders. Silver hair framed a face with fewer anxiety lines than a year ago. Not younger, but more present. "Dr. Simmons had asked in our final session what I'd learned from this ordeal. My answer had surprised us both. I learned that losing everything isn't the end. I'd said. Sometimes it's the beginning. As I turned out the light, my phone buzzed with a final text from Thomas. "You never deserved any of this, Mom, but I'm proud of who you've become through it." For the first time in years, I fell asleep without wondering what crisis tomorrow might bring. 2 years clean, announced Janice, beaming as the support group applauded. Never thought I'd say that after 40 years of smoking. I smiled, genuinely happy for her. The new chapters group at the community center had become a weekly fixture in my life, not specifically for fraud victims, but for anyone rebuilding after significant life changes. Janice had joined after her COPD diagnosis, determined to quit smoking and reclaim her health. "Margaret, would you like to share today?" asked the facilitator. I nodded, conscious of several new faces in the circle. "I'm Margaret. 3 years ago, I discovered my youngest child had been systematically defrauding me since my husband's illness. Today marks 18 months since our legal resolution." The room stayed respectfully quiet. They'd heard variations of my story before, though I added new reflections as my journey evolved. "Last week, something unexpected happened," I continued. "I received a letter from my daughter, the first direct communication in over a year. The letter had arrived without warning. No return address, but I recognized Amber's handwriting immediately. She didn't apologize explicitly," I explained to the group. "But she mentioned she's working steadily for the first time, managing her own finances. Her therapist suggested eventual mediated contact if I'm ever open to it." "How did that make you feel?" the facilitator asked. I considered carefully. Cautious. The letter showed some small progress. She acknowledged her actions without fully claiming responsibility, but there were no demands, no manipulation tactics. That's new. "Will you respond?" someone asked. "I have. I acknowledged receipt and said I need more time and evidence of sustained change before considering any contact." I smiled slightly. 3 years ago, I couldn't have set that boundary. I would have rushed to forgive, to fix, to restore what was broken, regardless of the cost to myself. After the meeting, I walked to the shoreline park that had become my thinking place. The small seaside community I now called home offered a peace I hadn't known was possible. My modest rental cottage, surrounded by lavender and rosemary, sat 4 blocks from this beach. Thomas and Michael visited regularly now. Thomas monthly from Boston, Michael more frequently since accepting a position at a nearby university. Our relationships had evolved, becoming more honest, less defined by old family roles. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. Conference call with the bank, in 30 minutes. Don't forget. Our financial literacy program had expanded beyond expectations. What began as informal workshops now operated as a small nonprofit, Secure Futures, offering education throughout the county. Bank of America had become our primary sponsor, with Diane Fletcher joining our advisory board after her retirement. As I walked home, I reflected on the journey. The financial wounds were healing slowly, some of the fraudulent loans forgiven, others restructured. Amber's court-ordered payments arrived irregularly, but consistently enough to avoid legal consequences. The deeper healing had come from unexpected sources. The bookshop community, my volunteer work, teaching others to protect themselves, reconnecting with my sons as adults rather than as their mother's keeper. At home, I prepared for the conference call, reviewing our program metrics. The cottage kitchen table, now my office, held neat stacks of curriculum materials. My laptop, once intimidating, had become an essential tool. At 69, I had mastered skills I once considered beyond my reach. Before dialing in, I glanced at Robert's photograph, now joined by pictures of Thomas's children and Michael's recent wedding. "You wouldn't recognize me now," I said softly to my husband's image, "but I think you'd be proud." The betrayal had nearly destroyed me. The legal battle had drained me. The family fracture still ached like a wound that would never fully heal. Yet standing in my small kitchen, preparing to discuss the program that had helped dozens of seniors protect themselves from similar exploitation, I felt something I had thought permanently lost. Purpose. I hadn't chosen this path. It had chosen me through circumstances I would never have willingly accepted. But walking it had revealed strengths I never knew I possessed, and connections I might otherwise never have made. As I dialed into the conference call, I caught my reflection in the window, straight-backed, clear-eyed, present, not defined by what had been taken from me, but by what I had built from the ruins, not the life I had planned, but finally, completely my own. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.